We spend seemingly our entire draft cycle talking about which players to take. Zero RB versus robust RB. We're even, getting smarter. We're talking about game theory. We're talking about uniqueness. We're talking about exposure percentages and all of these things. But what we haven't talked about is the main thing that drives all of those points. How much exposure should we have to a player? What kind of structure should we have? Which players should we target? And that's the 2022 fantasy football draft environment, the draft landscape. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Different pockets of the draft, elite quarterbacks, elite tight ends, late round quarterbacks, late round tight ends, the running back landscape, the first round. What do you even do in the first round? Because not every first round pick is the same. We're going to get into all of that today. So for anyone not watching live, and I guess technically for the people watching live too, I was rushing back. I tried to take the dogs for a walk right before this. It's like 1,000 degrees outside. We haven't gone today because it's too freaking hot. They are Husky Shepherd mixes. They cannot be outside, and it's literally like 100 plus degrees here and humid as hell. But I'm like, I'm going to get out there, maybe tire them out a little bit. So for the first time in the history of Spike Week, they aren't running around in the background, barking, hollering, doing all of that. And it is so freaking hot outside that I'm sweating my ass off right now. Still absolutely sweating my ass off. And we pushed it a little too close to the buzzer. The shot clock was running out on time for me to get back and get ready and get down here. So we have been scrambling for the last few minutes to get ready. So I apologize for being 2 minutes late or something like that. But holy shit, I feel like not the same pain, but like the sweat from eating the hot wings is what I feel right now. But I've been thinking about this show, right? I've been thinking about, new strategy concepts and all of that. I mean, this is all like a disgusting life that I lead. These are the things that I think about constantly throughout my day, throughout my week, and trying to think about, we can talk about the same bullshit strategy stuff every Thursday that everybody talks about, that I talk about, that I tweet about, that we talk about in Discord. But I want to cover some of the stuff that, maybe is not quite the exact same thing that we're all thinking about, even that I'm thinking about. Selfishly, I'm using a lot of this stuff to better my process and think about some different things and become smarter. And it just like kind of struck me listening to, I don't remember what it was, but if you watch draft streams here and elsewhere, and everybody talks about like, oh, this pocket of the draft, right? People, oh, I hate this pocket of the draft, or I hate this, I hate drafting at the turn because of this, or I don't like taking this player. Someone likes whatever. We were talking in the Discord the other day about Pat Freiermuth. Yesterday, I can't remember. We're talking about Pat Freiermuth, and some people like him, some people don't really like him, whatever. And the conversation is always leading with, well, here's the stats that he had, here's what I think about him as a player, blah, blah, blah. And this is what I do too. Here's what his projection is. Here's what his ceiling is, whatever. And nobody ever talks about the real reason why, if a guy is really just truly that mispriced. I mean, I don't really think that's possible at that point. We'll get to that in a second. But the conversation is always, oh, he's good, or oh, he's not good at football. Or, oh, look at this stat that says he's good. But on the flip side, we never say like, well, how does he fit into the draft landscape, right? Like how do these players, why is a player a good or a bad pick? Is sadly not just, we're not scouting the players, we're drafting teams in this like weird fucked up strategy game that we play, that we spend $25 today and draft a team, and we don't get, hopefully we make $10 in January of 2023. But as crazy as it sounds, it's not, is this dude, I mean, these things are a part of the process. Is this player good, right? What are some of the data points to back up? Is he good or is he bad or whatever? But the real point to all this is like, where do all these guys fit as puzzle pieces in this draft landscape that we're drafting in right now? Right? Josh Allen is awesome. Josh Allen is my QB1 and everyone's QB1, and is very clearly the best bet to be the QB1 overall. He's awesome. I haven't drafted Josh Allen yet. In BBM for sure. I think I maybe have gotten like one like late third round Josh Allen team or something that I stacked with Gabe Davis on DraftKings. I can pull it up in a minute. But point being, Josh Allen's awesome. I actually don't have a negative thing to say about Josh Allen. But when you analyze the 2022 landscape, for me personally, I'm not drafting him where he goes. There are too many other high value targets there. That doesn't mean that that's right, but that's my assessment of the situation. And so people start with the players and their player takes, or even their strategy takes. I'm a 0 RB drafter, so I have to draft XYZ. Or I like this player. This player has these good statistics behind him from last year. I have to draft this way. When it really starts with this whole landscape idea, right? If running back is crazy strong at the top, this is not the case. If running back is crazy strong at the top and wide receiver is crazy weak, like just let's just say, for instance, this year, nobody comes to the Cooper Cup level. We just have, maybe Jamar Chase gets hurt, Justin Jefferson gets hurt. Stephon Diggs is just kind of the same thing you did last year. People are worried about Devontae, which I totally understand, right? Being in Oakland, he's not going to be the same Devontae. You're worried about Tyreek because now he's in Miami. He's not with Mahomes. You're worried about A.J. Brown because now he's in another run first situation, whatever. What if there's just none of these guys pop? And next year, CMC stays healthy, JT stays healthy. Who knows? Najee is a smash, whatever. These guys are all smashes. That changes the landscape of what we're drafting in, right? It will be different. And we should thus treat it differently. But I find myself far too often being like, I like this player or I don't like this player. Or I believe in this strategy or I don't believe in this strategy. And some of it is because of the things we're going to talk about here with like the 2022 landscape. But also some of it is a little bit of stubbornness and a little bit of laziness at times. Like, I do like this player, I don't like this player, whatever, as opposed to the whole game that we play revolves around what the landscape of who, like the players are all chess pieces, right? And the chess pieces all cost different amounts, but the round that they go in, the ADP that they have. And so I'm trying to use all those chess pieces and move them around and put them together to my advantage, as opposed to just like picking one. I don't go pick one chess piece and say this one's the best chess piece regardless. I got to put this, this puzzle together. And so I wanted to talk about that today. It also, again, selfishly, motivated me to write the article about this subject that I have been meaning to write for, I don't know, a week or two, which I'm going to share my screen and kind of use this and the ADP and such as a kind of driving force for this conversation. So you see here, you go to Spike Week. This article is 100% free, so anybody can read it. But it's titled "How to Draft Optimally Within the 2022 Fantasy Football Environment," and that's what you see here, right? That's what I wrote way too many words about this, but I think it's important to talk through it too here on the stream, and you guys can also provide feedback, differences of opinion, maybe some other ideas around the subject. Sorry, I'm really thirsty. Taking the dogs for that walk was just truly a horrible idea. Well, how do we start puzzles? I'm a four corners kind of guy. I think, isn't that, I am not a puzzles expert. Tony, I'm not a puzzles expert, and I'm guessing that you're not either, but based on the fact that you had to ask, but I think that's how you're supposed to start. Aren't you supposed to start with the corners? Isn't that like what you're supposed to do? Or is that wrong? I don't know. That seems like the only way to start a puzzle, which is kind of this conversation that we're talking about here, right? But the four corners can be different things for everybody else, right? Everybody is putting together a different puzzle in their mind, basically. I'm putting together a picture of Gabe Davis. Tony's putting together a picture of Nico Collins and Najee Harris. But you start with the corners or the edges. And I understand that other people have different corners and edges. But to me, the corners and the edges are this. The corners and the edges are like, if Josh Allen was the 101, we wouldn't take him. And honestly, Josh Allen goes at like the 2-3 turn on DraftKings. And that's just crazy to me, given the other quarterbacks, right? We also talked today in the Discord about Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray goes like, you can get Kyler in like the middle of the 6th round, at least on DraftKings. Again, I've been drafting a little bit more on DraftKings lately, as opposed to Underdog. I'm about to get back into the Underdog streets. But, even on Drafters, goes a little bit later. You can get Kyler, who is not that different of a bet to Josh Allen. Yes, he's worse. That's why Josh Allen goes at the 2-3 turn and Kyler goes in the 6th round. But that gap is not so significant. And those 2v2s in particular is the big thing. When I get to the middle of the 6th round and all those high upside wide receivers are gone, I would love to have back that chance at AJ Brown or whoever. Name your 2nd, 3rd round wide receiver. I would love to get that 2nd or 3rd round wide receiver back, or what used to be Saquon Barkley. Josh Allen went at the same ADP as Saquon Barkley for a stretch. I would much rather have Saquon Barkley than the 6th round running back that I had, than Josh Jacobs or whatever. And Kyler Murray, right? You start playing these 2v2 games out in your head, and that's like this one little micro example from within this entire environment. Paul says Trey Lance is a centerpiece, and all paths lead to Lance. I do also zip it FF Doom. I think we don't need to spend another episode talking about Trey Lance, but I think that is another element that I actually didn't cover in this article, because I think the market has gotten fairly settled in. We're going to get movement for sure, but the market is now, when we're drafting, gotten fairly settled in. You guys that are in the chat have been, like all of us, drafting for months now. And Trey Lance, we remember him going in the hundreds, and now he's going in the 70s. And so he's still a part of my strategy, of course, but Trey Lance is very much so a cornerstone to how you think about drafts when he's going in the hundreds, right? And now when he's in the 70s, he's still a piece of the strategy, but that totally changes the game, right? Which is like, see, like this kind of top bullet, like player and team ADP, like the Josh Allen thing, like Trey Lance going at pick 110 is an edge piece. Trey Lance going at pick 70 is like is like somewhere in the middle. He's some piece that you never figure out where the fuck it goes until you're close to done. I hate puzzles. Who made puzzles? Why do people do puzzles? That's fun for people, like finding these pieces and putting them together. Like I like it when there's like this, like sports and money involved and stuff, but like sit down and get these little cardboard things with a picture on it. Like just show me the fucking picture. Why do I have to spend a long time putting these little weird pieces together? I don't know. It's a very weird human thing. If I'm gonna die on puzzles are stupid, I'm more than happy to. I don't get it. Yeah, here we go. 200K guaranteed puzzle contest. See, I would play. I would study the optimal way to put puzzles together. I would have schooled Tony at the very top of the episode when he said, I start with the four corners, which I think is correct. But you know what I mean? We would have really got deep into this. I would 100% yell, even at 100-piece puzzle. Imagine thousands and thousands of pieces of a puzzle and just like dumping them out all over the table and like have fun. I don't know. That's not fun to me, but fun to me is also something like that other people think is incredibly stupid. Like Hacker says, people that do puzzles don't understand drafting fantasy football teams in March and April. So I don't really, I'm not throwing shit. Sorry to the puzzle lovers. I'm not throwing shade at it. It's not for me. It's kind of like early running backs. I get it. You don't have to reply to my tweet and tell me about early running backs. I fucking get it. It's not for me. A little worried about your running backs because your RB1 is Kareem Hunt. Like, I know you don't like this. I don't like your teams. You guys like puzzles. I don't like puzzles. That's okay. We can like different things. We can disagree. Not on the internet in 2022. You're not allowed to disagree. But Jake says, my 2-year-old son would smoke you fools in puzzles, and his name is Bullock, which is very funny. Carlos says, my lame best friend who loves fantasy doesn't even understand drafting best ball teams in the summer. Yeah, a lot of people don't. We'll get there. There's a reason, Carlos, that I 4 to 5 days a week, year fucking round, I'm doing streams talking about this subject because I believe it's going to continue to grow and be the future. But I assure you, no one understands that people think you're a moron for caring about fantasy football in March more than me. It's pretty. It's definitely a year-round sport, but that is not the consensus. So let's talk about. Yeah, and so this is the problem, Tony. The best way to get good at puzzles is practice. I agree. I don't want to fucking practice puzzles. That's the problem. It's like I don't like to play tennis. I could get better at tennis if I went out there, but I fucking hate it. So I don't want to do it. And I'm not good enough at it to make any money. I've made a little money at this best ball thing. Still don't know if I'm good enough to make money at it, but I have so far. So I would like to keep trying. I would like to do what you did and make $1 million. I can do that. I can't do that making puzzles as far as I know. Maybe I can. Maybe I'm going to go busto in best ball this year. Everybody keeps telling me I can't draft, more than 15% of a player because you're going to go broke. Like I'm spending my life fucking savings on best ball. So I guess that's what's going to happen. I'm going to go, Gabe Davis is going to bust. Oh no, Trey Lance is going to bust. And I'm going to be broke because apparently everybody spends their life savings on their best ball teams. And I'm going to go be a master puzzle maker. That's the plan. You heard it here first. I'm not diversifying enough my player exposures. I'm going to be like, I won't have any dollars to put into best ball next year because of the few $1,000 I spent on Gabriel Davis. So I'm going to go into puzzles. Anyway, 2022. Let's get no more puzzle talk. How you led me into the exposure thing. Clearly it hit you. We hit a trigger. So anyway, first thing. Yeah, way to go. Way to derail. I'm kidding. I'm easily derailed by my own stupidity. The first thing you see here, talk about the top 5. I think it's actually the very first and clearest thing. Even a total noob to puzzles can figure out to find the corners. First, even a total noob to fantasy football can figure out that the top 5 players in this year are like so significantly better than everybody else that like you need to think about your strategy as it pertains to those guys. I obviously wrote here a lot about, a bunch of different nuances to the top 5 picks, but the general point and premise, right, is a first round pick is not a first round pick. I know Tony disagrees. He has Najee Harris. Some people might like shout out Soccer Dave or whatever, might like Derrick Henry. Some people might have different opinions on this, but if you go across literally the entire market, and we'll get to the Najee thing, we'll go across literally the entire market. Those top 5 guys are very clearly in a tier of their own. The Najee thing is where we get to kind of the next step. What do? You can't always get a top 5 pick, or as what Tony is doing, you can, if you want to just take a stand on someone against and say the market is wrong about this, I'm right about this. Back to the exposure thing. That's okay. People confuse a high risk tolerance with necessarily a poor strategy. I don't personally agree with the Najee thing, but I get what someone is doing. I mean, that's clearly a high upside. How many workhorse backs do we have in the entire NFL that are in their second year, whatever? There's definitely reasons to like Najee Harris, but once you get beyond the top, if you're anybody besides Tony, once you get beyond the top 5, the very clearest thing, which I think is, I wrote here and I felt stupid writing it, but is really just don't get fancy. And if Najee is if there's a top 6 for you, Najee's in your top 6. He's in the same tier. There's a top 6 for you. When those guys are gone, like if you pick 9th and Jamar Chase falls to 9th, praise the best ball gods, be like grateful, scoop him up. Don't worry. I don't care if you have 30% Jamar Chase. If he falls to the 9th pick, you just fucking take him. So all the other stuff gets thrown out the window because this top 5 thing is important, right? And that's where some of the other conversations get lost. It's like, if that guy's the best at that pick. You don't take a worse player because of these other strategic elements that you care about, like diversification, like week 17, like all this other stuff. People have put the cart in front of the horse with the really basic stuff where we all agree that these top 5, these guys are an example of a greater thing in fantasy football, but these top 5 guys are the top 5 guys, or these top 6 guys for Tony are the top 6 guys. Once you factor that in, the other stuff is secondary. Your portfolio and all of that, you don't actively take something that is significantly lesser valued just because it's going to take you from 30 to 31% on this player, or 15 to 16% on this player. You don't take a worse projected player, like a significantly worse projected player, because of another lever. Those other levers are lower down on the decision-making totem pole, lower on the decision tree. And so The top five is an important thing to understand, generally speaking, to know going into drafts. It's also an example of a greater kind of issue that exists in best ball. The other thing is the fact that what do we do if we don't get one of the top five guys, right? Or shit, what happens if we're really unlucky and we just don't get the top five guys as much as the field? That can happen. It's not like the sites get to, evenly divide all of our picks where we get the same amount of number ones, twos, 12s, whatever. It's random. You can easily get just a shit ton of 10th picks. And this isn't just for that, but like, what do you do when you pick 9th and those guys are not available? You don't even get maybe the benefit of picking at the turn where you can kind of double tap second tier players. You just get thrown into this next tier where after those top five guys, or top six, after those top five guys, there's like how many? Like hackers throwing Saquon, and I have zero issue with that. Saquon is one of my highest owned players, maybe my highest owned running back, up there as one of my highest owned running backs. It's slowly changing a little bit as he rises in price, but still, I think he's underpriced. But he's a perfect example. This dude was going in the middle of the third round when we started doing drafts. Now he's in the middle of the second round. But you go into that next tier with Najee, Eckler, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Saquon, Aaron Jones, Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb, even Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, right? Debo, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown. What is the fucking difference between all of those guys? Yes, we can sit here and argue. Some people obviously like Najee more, some people like Saquon more, some people like Debo more, AJ Brown, whatever. But truthfully, if we're being honest with ourselves, that is a tier that goes to like mid-late third round. Let's just call it the middle of the third round. So from the middle of the first round to the middle of the third round, it's like we could make a case for all of them. Saquon went in the middle of the third round. I could make a case he should be the sixth. He should be that sixth guy, even over Najee. I could make that case. I think some people would make that case, right? I could make the case for Diggs, Debo, AJ Brown, Kyle Pitts. We can make the case for so many of these guys. And so then what do you do, right? In this top end of drafts when it's this gigantic tier that's all the same. Two things for me. I think I'm dying of dehydration. I'm glad I brought some extra water. Two things. One that I've been doing is you see, like I said, my personal favorite approach is actually Travis Kelce. And I perfect example of analyzing the 2022 environment instead of the player take thing. If you came into this year, I mean, I would have been like, whatever, Travis Kelce's fine, just because Tyreek Hill is gone. And obviously, I mean, I shouldn't need to go into really much about Travis Kelce. The fact that Tyreek Hill is gone, he plays for the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, and he's the best fantasy tight end in the league. Probably has some decent upside, but I'm also very anti-old player. There's a lot of guys here at the top that I do really like. And coming into the year, I don't think I ever would have said, oh yeah, Travis Kelce smash at the 106. Like, not at all. I actually would have came in saying like, that's ridiculous. He's 34 or whatever. Like, that's absurd. You can't take him there. Tyreek Hill, this offense might crater without Tyreek Hill. You can't take this old tight end without Tyreek Hill on the offense. The team is like almost in a mini rebuild. You can't take him at the 106. I would have laughed at myself for even putting this on the internet. But when you analyze this draft environment and you see the top five, and then you see this tier where everybody's the fucking same after that tier, what's the way to kind of leverage against those top five? The easiest way is to be like, well, I'm just not going to take those positions. I'm going I'm going to play for the scenario in which Travis Kelce just dusts the tight end field. Travis Kelce is the tight end one. He beats the ever-living shit out of every other tight end because he plays for the Chiefs. And guess what? Tyreek Hill isn't there. You think Tyreek Hill, Juju, Sky Moore, these MVS, you think these guys are stealing targets from Travis Kelce? Of course not. This is the case we're making, right? He's going to catch 125 passes and 15 touchdowns at tight end. And tight end is so weak, he's just going to distance himself from the field. And so even though Justin Jefferson's awesome, Cooper Kupp's awesome, CMC, etc., Jonathan Taylor, Chase are awesome, you get this tight end who ends up actually being the best first-round pick, and you got him pick 6 through pick 10 or whatever. So you end up overweight on this first-round tight end. And he's like the key, he's the skeleton key. He's the leverage point. He could suck because he's old, and who knows what happens with the Chiefs without Tyreek. But that's the way I'm thinking about it. And just one way to think about it. It doesn't have to be that that's what you also believe, but that's kind of, especially on PPR sites, that's what I've been thinking. It's a smidge different on Underdog, but not particularly. The other thing is, again, because of this huge tier, like we talked about, you go from the 106 to the 306, and all these dudes are the same. Well, how do you then kind of create some leverage on the field, knowing that you're giving up projected points? Well, it would be to create these combinations of players that the field just doesn't have. Greg said, Hacker said, I think it was Hacker that said Saquon. Yeah, Saquon is the answer. Well, if Saquon is the answer, start figuring out ways to get combinations of Saquon with all these dudes that no one's going to have with Saquon, right? Maybe you think Debo is the answer. Debo fairly strictly goes, in that middle of the second round, pretty strictly goes in the middle of the second round. Some people will do the Devontae, right? Us Gal Brain week 17 people will do the Devontae Debo thing at, the 111 and 202, whatever. But generally speaking, Debo goes in a pretty tight band in the second round. So take Debo with the other second round, middle of the second round picks. You get to the turn, take Debo 111 and whatever, DeAndre Swift at the 202, or him and Mark Andrews, or him and whatever, right? You get the point. Take these guys that are these unique combinations of players that the field is just not going to have. And more importantly, the field is not going to have when they don't get that top 5 player, where we all think he is. You have an instant downgrade from not having the top 5. Let's see here. Yeah, Carlos. Jamar Chase fell. See, it is interesting. Chase fell to Carlos in the 9th in the puppy. And that's interesting because he doesn't really fall on Underdog at all. You'll get lucky on DraftKings every once in a while. That is what Tony is doing with Najee. With the player combinations, and I think it's brilliant. You just need to be right about Najee. You're right about that one thing, and then all these other combinations, just you didn't have to do anything, right? Everybody else is well, I'm just going to draft 10%. I'm going to draft 8 point whatever percent of every single one of the 8.3% of every single player, and now I'm not going to have any combinations of any of these. I'm going to have one team that has a combination of every single one of these players. So now you've just made it significantly harder on yourself, right? You literally had to win through structure. And guess what? All the other sharp players are winning through structure. We can't all win $2 million through structure. You know what I mean? That's everybody. I'm going to win through structure. Well, my structure is good too. And Tony's structure is good, and Hacker's structure, and FF Doom structure, and Paul's structure. Everybody's structure is good. So how else are you winning? Because we can't all win through structure. I mean, we all might create plus EV portfolios, but we can't all win $1 million through structure. Sorry, we're hitting all the hot button issues. Here, Paul says, I moved Lamb to 107 in the Puppy 2, so I was getting combos with players that are going at the same ADP as Lamb. Exactly. Pick whichever approach you want, right? That CD one is a perfect one. What Tony is doing with Najee is a perfect one. What I'm doing with Kelsey is a very similar thing to both of those. It's like, I just made Kelsey the 106. If I don't get one of the top 5 guys, I'm probably going to get Kelsey. And then I'm just going to have as many different combinations with Travis Kelce as possible and be like, okay, on my teams that didn't get one of the top 5, I have Kelsey and I have a combination with them. Diggs is my 107. He didn't used to go here on Underdog, and he doesn't go this high on DraftKings, but same thing. Okay, I don't get that. It's going to be Diggs and Kelsey. It's not even for a lack of interest in Najee or Eckler or whatever. I see the case for those guys entirely. It's just, what am I going to do to combat the teams that don't have what I think are just a total tier above first pick? Yep, definitely. Paul says you got to be sure to make sure you're not, if you do this, like particularly with CD, with Kelsey, it's not as big of a difference, but with Najee, but with you do something like CD or Debo or whatever, right? You do them at the 106, 107. You got to make sure that you don't, like in a draft, at 1 out of every 6 or 7 drafts, somebody falls and you're like, you actually got a player that combination isn't very unique. Hacker says, I've been getting Kyler at the 4-5 turn to mix his team with the top picks. I've been doing a little bit similar too. Anybody that knows me has seen me post about it and me stream about it and stuff. That Kyler Hollywood specifically, but Kyler's my big quarterback stand with Lance, obviously. Kyler is a guy I'm just constantly smashing, and so I kind of just like move him around. He's my chess piece. I move Kyler around the board depending on kind of how I've started or whatever, because I just want to get all these different Kyler combinations. Once I have, which here's the other thing, you're never going to have all the combinations covered that you want. And so that's also the fool's gold that people will talk about. Like, oh, I have 25% of this guy. That's too much. And they don't actually know what combinations of players they have with that guy. Like if I have 25% of Kyler and I only have a couple of him stacked with DeAndre Hopkins, and like maybe you want that, but maybe you don't. Maybe I only have a couple of him stacked with Hollywood. Maybe I only have a couple of him with Kyle Pitts as the week 17 bring back. Maybe I only have a couple with Rondale, whatever. Maybe I only have, more importantly than those, what people actually miss more than just the stacks is, I look at your Kyler, right? I have 25% Kyler. How many Kyler Hollywood teams do I have? And look through all the first round picks and look through all the second round picks and look through all the third round picks and be like, oh shit, I don't have Kyler CMC Hollywood. Like I don't have it. Even though I have 25% Kyler, I don't have Kyler with CMC. You'll be stunned when you look through the player combinations, if you get Draft IQ on Spike Week, shameless plug. If you get this draft tool here, Draft IQ, which I do have. I can pull it up actually. Let's take a quick detour. Let's take a quick detour over to all Draft IQ. I'm running the show. I can fucking talk about whatever I want to talk about. You see here, I've drafted 42 BBM teams. I haven't updated this today. Let's look at DraftKings. But this is a good time to talk about. I think I've gotten to 100. I'm really trying to push through this $5 milli so I can get this fucking thing over with. But really quick, to prove to kind of show this point about the player combination thing. Even me, Paul said CD. Paul said he was doing CD with different players in the middle of the second round. CD Debo. I've drafted 100 teams. Do you think I have any CD Debo? No. Is there any particular reason you shouldn't have any CD Debo teams other than this ADP construct that we've like put on ourselves? Not really, right? Even like CD Kelsey. I have a bunch of Kelsey. Three teams. I have hold on one second. I have I should have just searched it. Sorry. I have 23%, as you see here. I have 23% Travis Kelsey. Also, even still getting 23%. I'm getting a tiny little baby smidge of value on him. So I have 23% Travis Kelsey. And despite having 23% Travis Kelsey in 100 teams, I have 3 with him and CeeDee Lamb. Let's use the Kelsey one. Here's AJ Brown. What about Travis Kelsey and AJ Brown? I have 23% Travis Kelsey. AJ Brown is like a priority target for me. I don't have that. Perfect question. From Hayden. What about Kelsey and Javonte? 3 total team. Again, as you guys know, I just have ranted about Travis Kelsey being a stand I'm trying to take on DraftKings. You guys know full well Javonte is one of my dudes. And I have 3 total teams. 3. And then you look. And you're like, all of them have Alec Pierce. Is there any particular reason they all have Alec Pierce? Of course not. But that just happened. Right? It just happened. And like you'll start to see when you look at the player combination stuff, you're like, shit. Either A, most importantly, I don't have enough Travis Kelsey and Javonte Williams. That's my favorite Week 17 game. These are probably my 2, even aside from the Week 17 bullshit. The Broncos and Chiefs are like my 2 favorite teams to target. I basically, even if they didn't play in Week 17, I would probably want a Chief or a Bronco on every team. They're like part of this 2022 landscape thing, which we'll get to the next. We're running a little behind, but I want to talk about the uncertainty around player movement, new teams, players changing teams, whatever. And that has created a buying opportunity on the Broncos and the Chiefs. And I love Javonte Williams. I'm way higher on him than market. Again, you can go look at the Spike Week rankings and you'll see I'm way higher on Javonte than market. And I have Travis Kelsey as my 6th overall player, and he goes anywhere from 9th to 11th or whatever. So I'm clearly higher on Travis Kelsey. I don't have that combination of players. And then not only do I not have it, every team I have thereafter with the whopping 3 out of 100 teams, they all have Alec Pierce. Why? I don't know. I like Alec Pierce, but like he's not like some crazy big target. Let's actually see how much Alec Pierce I have. I do have 18% Alec Pierce, which is also way higher than I would have thought. I didn't, and I haven't gotten very good ADP value. I think I was taking him pretty early, in early rounds or early drafts. But like you see, right? Like if you run through this exercise of thinking about these things, you discover different ways that you should approach your drafts, where you're like the CD Debo one was a good example. I don't think CD or Debo, either one of them are first round picks. But are they in the same relative tier to everyone from the 106 to the 206? Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much what the market has said. So why then would I not want to have any teams with both of them together? That doesn't make any real sense, other than I'm just being hamstrung by the ADP, right? Sorry, there's been some comments. I definitely live a little. How many rounds down the board does this opposite sides of the board thing apply? 5-ish rounds before ADP range becomes too wide. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have a. It actually happens fairly quick, I think. To your point, to Hayden's point, I think the gaps in it's funny because it's like a barbell. At the beginning of drafts, you have these tier breaks that are like gigantic, right? The difference, in my opinion, of Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and anyone you can draft at the 106 is seriously so massive. So that's one end of the barbell where there's like, I don't know, there's like 25 dudes after Jamar Chase that are like the same fucking guy. Like I prefer Travis Kelce and Stephon Diggs personally. Tony prefers Najee. Some people prefer Eckler. Some people prefer Derrick Henry. Whatever. That's kind of the point, is that after those guys, I don't know. They're all Saquon. Some people prefer Saquon. They're all in this like exact same tier. So you have this barbell end down here, and it goes till whatever. So you have this little, again, to this 2020 environment. The beginning of drafts, you have this weird dichotomy of this thing where there's like one little baby tier of 5 players and then one huge tier of all the same players. But then you reach another tier where it's like, that's not necessarily true. You do have a small tier, I think, the Hollywoods, DJ Moores, the Broncos wide receivers, Gabe Davis, Allen Robinson, whatever, and the elite quarterbacks. Once you start throwing in the quarterbacks, it gets a little tricky. But kind of another lumping in there, kind of a tier, and then you reach a really heavy tier break thereafter. I should not have unshared. Sorry. Let me go to underdog. I prefer to look at the underdog ADP. So if we sort by ADP, right? So we get down to let's say here, right? I know people really like the Chargers wide receivers, and that's what's kind of keeping them where they're at. But to me, I mean, we can argue about where this tier break lies, somewhere around here. But to me, you get past like AJ Brown or whatever, or if you want to include the Chargers wide receiver in that top tier, and I like Michael Pittman fine, but like I can't include Michael Pittman in the same tier as AJ Brown. I can't do it. So right, you get into some range here, and you're like, I don't know. All these dudes are AJ Brown versus Deebo Samuel and Mike Evans. I don't know. Not that different, right? CeeDee Lamb versus AJ. What's the difference between CeeDee Lamb and AJ Brown? So anyway, you have that. Then you kind of get into this little weird area, like I said, Hollywood, Waddle, McLaurin. I would call these guys kind of their own little tier. If you want to mix and match within there, I think that is okay. But I wouldn't mix and match from outside of, I don't know. Like I wouldn't start, if you like Brandon Cooks, I wouldn't start mixing Brandon Cooks in over these guys up here, over Jalen Waddle and Gabe Davis. I would treat this differently than that weird first to third round tier, right? But then you get down here. Shocker that Josh Jacobs is the cutoff, right? You get to Josh Jacobs. Once Josh Jacobs is the top player left in the queue, you're like, yep, we've hit this fucking god awful spot of the draft that I hate everybody, right? I really like, Jalen Hurts I like, but like I really like Chris Godwin's maybe my favorite player in the entire NFL. He blew out his knee at the end of the season. I don't feel super confident in that. Amari Cooper is going to be playing with Jacoby Brissett, right? AJ Dillon is on the Packers as a early down grinder, splitting the backfield with Aaron Jones not catching any passes, and Devontae Adams isn't on the team anymore, so the offense might stink. But he goes here, right? Dalton Schultz, we're taking Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz goes 67th overall. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? Russell Gage goes 69th overall. Why do these guys go there? Because there's nobody fucking left to take. in this tier, right? So when we talk to then to Hayden's point here, like, when do you think about this mixing and matching stuff? Like, dude, if you want to take Elijah Moore a little early, if you want to take Drake London a little early, if you want to take whatever Russ, you want to take any of the, if you like the guys I just shit on, that's fine. If you want to take on Renfro or Alan Lazard or whatever, if you take Alan Lazard over Dalton Schultz, who gives a shit? Like that, there's no difference in those guys. You know what I mean? So it's playing through those little pockets. And I think it's most important in what we've shown here, these top 80 picks or whatever, if that makes sense. Let's see here. This is true. This is definitely true. The other thing, what percentage fill rate on tournaments before we really get into uniqueness? Two things. One, I don't worry about it a ton, except that I only get 150 bullets. It's not even just about uniqueness, like, oh, this is super unique in the tournament. It's like, I have people think you're like, oh, I get to draft 150 times. And then you draft 100 and you don't have, like, I've drafted 100 teams. I don't have CeeDee Lamb and Debo. Is there a reason? Nope. I don't have a reason. It just happened because I was being strict to ADP. I'm not trying to be unique necessarily for every combo against the field. That's, of course, a perk. But I'm also like, I don't know. I just want, I'm the reason I draft CD early, like what Paul was doing, or the reason I'm drafting Travis Kelce 106 is literally to get all those combinations. Not just because of uniqueness, but because I want to have Travis Kelce with every single one of those other players. And so it's not just about how unique is this going to be? Is the ADP going to shift? Whatever. And then the other thing, I think on Underdog specifically, which obviously is who Hayden works for and where most people draft, the ADP's a lot closer to locked in. We're going to get some shifts from injuries and some camp reports that we didn't expect, but I don't think we're going to get, I mean, Gabe Davis isn't going to be a second round pick. You know what I mean? Like those kinds of things. Deebo Samuel's not going to go. CeeDee Lamb's not going to go 106. It can't happen. Like, it's just not going to happen. So we can also be smart about that. So we can, I would say there are probably certain players I would be less interested in thinking about the unique combinations for. I don't necessarily have one of those off the top of my head, but I think we can also be smart enough to kind of think through that part. You said it, Tony. We've spent a lot of time here on the first. Maybe we'll have to do a follow. This will be a part one. This will be a part one to the 2022 landscape, because that conversation, hopefully you guys enjoyed it, because it was actually really good for me, and I really enjoyed that conversation. But there's about 50 other things I wanted to cover in terms of the 2022 draft environment. So maybe we'll double back and do a follow-up show, because I do want to hit some of you guys' comments, because I prefer that than me talking. I prefer listening to what you guys have to say and talking those things through. Let's see. Yeah, just to hit on, Hayden was having some conversation with people. I think it's very true through 5 and still kind of true until about round 9. I think that's a like pretty damn spot on assessment of how I would put it. Like, once that's the other thing. People will be like, oh, it's a unique combination to take this 13th round player in the 11th round. Like, no, it's fucking not. Like, stop. We don't care about it there. But in the first X amount of rounds, people are very, very, very rigid to ADP. And as Hayden says here, even through like round 9 or whatever, you have a general idea of a tight pocket where most players are going to go. And so you can be smart about mixing and matching those things. And again, it's not just like I'm creating uniqueness against the field, which is an aspect to it. That's a variable. But it is, I am implementing this Najee Harris strategy, this Travis Kelce strategy, or like, I just don't want all my Justin Jefferson teams to be the same. Like, I want Justin Jefferson's probably, if you had to pick one player, you were like, who could you just take on every team this year? It would probably be Justin Jefferson for me. And it's like, I don't want all my Justin Jefferson teams to look the same. So guess what? I'm going to reach a little bit here, and then maybe in another draft somebody falls or whatever. And so I'm thinking about that again, like through 7 to 9 rounds. I'm thinking about that, and then by the 12th round, who gives a shit? I'm just trying to make the best team, but I am thinking about those things. But I have to know that going in. I have to know, do I have any Debo and CD? Nope, 0. I have to know, do I have any Justin Jefferson and Debo? I don't know. I want to. Now you guys have got me on this. My mind is in a pretzel. Now I'm going to look. Oh, here's on Underdog. So let's just look at Justin Jefferson teams. Like, we can start with literally one. Just start with literally one player. I just said Justin Jefferson's one of my favorite players. I have 8. So I have 19% Justin Jefferson. So I'm clearly taking him not just at his ADP. I've taken him a little bit different than there. 8 out of 42. Is there any particular reason that 75% of those Justin Jefferson teams have Donta Foreman? I mean, I really like Donta Foreman, but 75% of the teams having Justin Jefferson and Donta Foreman, it's not necessarily. This is maybe a better example, right? So like, you start stacking up. So here's a good one. So 60, right? 5 of my 8 Justin Jefferson teams have Gabe Davis, which I'm okay with that, but depending on how you feel about Gabe Davis, you may not want that. Also, 50% of my Justin Jefferson teams have T. Higgins or Trey Lance, Alberto, right? So then what if I look at the combination of those two? So there's 16, there's 5 teams I know that have both of these guys. Well, 3 of them then. So I have 8 Justin Jefferson teams. 5 of them have Gabe Davis. 3 of those have Gabe Davis and T. Higgins. 3 of those have all these dudes. Do I want that? Right? So you start playing with this stuff, and that's where the draft environment comes in. This is happening solely because of the draft environment, where the ADP falls on all these guys. And we're humans. We're suckers to it, right? And so it just happens that like that's the guy who's available at the pick on the teams that these work out. And like, is there any reason that I have 60% of Donta Foreman, Justin Jefferson, Gabe Davis? No, not really. I mean, I'm fine with it because I like those guys. But you start to realize really quickly that I only have 5 Justin Jefferson and Gabe Davis teams, 2 of my personal favorite players. And then you see really quickly that there's a lot of dudes you don't have on those teams. So now imagine these are players I'm heavily exposed to, right? I have 20% Justin Jefferson. I have a 35 or 40% Gabe Davis. So these are like 2 top exposure players. And I already have tons of dudes that I don't have on teams with them. So if you only draft 8% of every single player, you may never get Justin Jefferson and Gabe Davis together. You may never get Justin Jefferson, Gabe Davis, and MVS. You may never get any of that. And that's just strictly through probably drafting off ADP and not looking at your portfolio. Okay. We've gone down a rabbit hole. This tool is changing, legit changing. Me too. Rob said this tool is changing how I draft. It's changing how I draft. And I thought it's so fucked up. I thought I was like thinking through a lot of these things, and you realize 2 things really quick when you start to actually dive into this. You're like, I thought I was thinking through the unique combos, the making sure I have Travis Kelce with this guy and this guy and this guy, whatever. You thought you were doing that, and then you look at it really quick and you realize very quick that you're not. And without actually knowing, it's fucking impossible. Like literally without digging into this, I never would have known. There's so many of these examples that I could point to where it just like, I mean, like I said, so I have 8 Justin Jefferson teams. I don't know. Let me try and find somebody here that makes sense. I'm trying to see if I can like, do I have a Justin Jefferson and Kyler team? I don't know. Kyler is my favorite quarterback, and Justin Jefferson is my favorite wide receiver. Do I have any of those teams? 2. You know what I mean? Like, so like, am I implementing my strategy correctly? I don't know. And now look at this. The only play, like I have 3 players, fucking Donta Foreman. Like, why is Donta Foreman on every one of these teams? Drake London, I understand why he's on there. But like Albert O, do I want Albert O on all my Kyler and Justin Jefferson teams? No. And I really like Albert O too. But same thing. Like, do these numbers make sense? These guys? Or more particularly, do the guys make sense that aren't on this list? That's the most interesting thing. Shout out John. Yeah, this tool literally has definitely changed my life. Let me hit some of the comments. And then this was not how I expected this was going to go. So what we're going to do is do a follow-up show to talk through the rest of the 2022 kind of draft environment ideas. But to be fair, there's a lot. And I do think like kind of what we turned the top 5 conversation into was really productive. So we will follow up with kind of some more detail. Yeah, unconscious inherent bias. That's what happens. It's absolutely unconscious. You have no idea. And the best part is it's you think you're being conscious about it. Right? You think that you have this bias, so you're gonna draft the different combinations, right? I literally, myself and Hacker, who's in the chat, literally built this fucking tool. And so I feel like I'm as aware about the player combination thing as anybody on the planet. And I live, eat, drink, sleep best ball. And I am every single day uncovering things about the teams I've drafted that I didn't know, didn't plan for, don't like, don't want, whatever. And I'm actually consciously, when I'm going through drafts, trying to avoid it, but it just still happens and you don't even realize that it happens. This is definitely true. Anyone who's talking about portfolios and it doesn't have to be this tool. I don't imagine anybody else has built anything like this tool, but you're definitely shooting from the hip. David says it's hard to really think shit through when you have 30 seconds to pick 100%. And that's why talking about this, like we're talking about it, and analyzing your portfolio is so important. I actually haven't been I mentioned this on Twitter the other day. I haven't been drafting as much of late because when I get the free time that would be draft time, I'm spending it to do this. Like, show me Justin Jefferson and Kyler Murray, right? Show me Gabriel Davis and whatever. This is a better one because it's harder to get. Show me Gabriel Davis and Jamar Chase. Oh, fuck. I only got 2. I really like Jamar Chase. I really like Gabriel Davis. I only got 2. Oh, damn. Both of them have Darrell Henderson. And somehow I also did the T. Higgins and Jamar Chase thing, which I actually don't like in BBM, right? So I have one Gabriel Davis and Jamar Chase team that doesn't have T. Higgins. I have one Gabriel Davis and Jamar Chase team that doesn't have Mike Williams. I have one Gabriel Davis and Jamar Chase team that doesn't have, let's pick another person that's random, right? Deshaun Watson, who I don't particularly want, right? But without doing that and kind of analyzing it and figuring out what you actually have in that portfolio, there's no way for you to you definitely can't do it in that 30-second clock without doing kind of the analysis. And that's what I'm trying to do. GA says, what's the elite quarterback requirement? And I think it's top 6 rounds because Kyler and those guys go in the top 6. I don't know if Hacker's in the first 5 rounds. Which you see over here in Best Ball Mania, I have. Oh, I still have it filtered, and I was like, "What the fuck?" I only have one elite quarterback team. But there's another thing you see with Gabe Davis and Jamar Chase. I have only 0 between 2 teams. I have 1 0 running back team and 1 hero running back team. I have 1 elite quarterback team and I have 1 elite tight end team. And obviously, they both have Buffalo and Cincy stacks since they are inherently a stack. But then I can, you can just see what the hell is going on. And again, doubling it back to kind of this 2022 environment type thing. Some of this stuff, a lot of this stuff is because of what the 2022 draft environment is. It just ADP exists. Players are only available at certain times in drafts. And so these things happen without you knowing that they're going to happen or without you even thinking that they did happen. Let's see. John says, Eric, if you had this tool this is a good question. Eric, if you had this tool from day one of BBM, how would it change your approach to a contest? How would you best leverage it? It's 1,000,000% the I don't want to say just player combinations because that doesn't actually totally describe it, but that's the easiest term to put to it. It is the this player combination. So like I know people love, and I love, the structure, roster build, looking at week 17, whatever. The one thing about week 17 that is incredible is being able to see the actual, right? I can see which specific combination. So I'm going to lump this week 17 stacks and week 16 stacks and stuff into this player combination thing. This is included in the thing that I would use. It is. So for me personally, and if you have the approach that's kind of the antithesis of this, where you are the diversification bro, right? You want to draft 8% of every player. That's fine. We disagree, but that's fine. But I would, even if I did that, I would go in and I would say, that is my strategy, but let me see. Okay, I just did a draft. Let me, right? So every time you do a draft for anybody that doesn't know, I'm going to share this really fast. When you want to just push an update, you just go back to, like, say, Underdog. Like, obviously right here, I'm looking at Underdog, right? And I would click to get lineups for Spike Week. Like, if I did another BBM, I would push it right away and send it to Draft IQ. And then I would literally, like, kind of like assess, like, almost after every draft, like this, right? Okay, I just did I have whatever. I just did a draft. I know I did the draft, and I drafted Mike Williams in that draft. And I would be like, okay, I'm trying to do 8% of every team, or 8% of every team, 8% of every player. And so I'd be like, okay, what do my Mike Williams teams like actually look like? And be like, let's investigate those teams specifically, right? And go through here and look at them. And then you start here, right? And then you drill down even further. Okay, shit. Mike Williams, my highest owned player with Mike Williams is Gabe Davis. Let's look at that. And then, because I can adjust and be like, okay, maybe I'm going to go to 10% on this player or 12% on this player because of I just made some mistakes within that. And it's as you said, it is totally something you're doing absolutely unintentionally, where, like, even if you want to be diversification bro, you're going to do things that actually aren't diversified, right? I want to draft 10% of every player, round numbers. I want to draft 10% of every player. But then I get into it and I say, okay, I am drafting 10% of every player, right? I'm massaging my individual raw player exposure, Mike Williams and Gabe Davis. And you're like, okay, now let's look. I got my 10% of Mike Williams. I got my Gabe Davis. Now let's look at Mike Williams and Gabe Davis teams. And you're like, well, actually, I have all the same players on Mike Williams and Gabe Davis, right? I have Daniel Jones on all of those teams, or I have Javonte Williams, or whatever. You think you're diversifying within an individual player, and you are within that individual player, but that it ends up not being diversification. So that is from that angle. From me personally, to answer your question, how I specifically would approach it, it would be very similar, except I am obviously much more interested in taking some player level stands. As you guys see here, I have, a lot of multiple players, but I would be constantly, after like every draft, massaging those combinations. I'd be like, I took Gabe again, and here's the Gabe team. I took Gabriel Davis again. This time, for fucking once, I don't have Donta Foreman on that team, right? I have Christian McCaffrey. Please, God, let me. I bet I don't have one of these. One. So every Gabe Davis team has Foreman. One of them has CMC. I pray to God okay. I didn't handcuff him, at least. I didn't handcuff him. But I would be like, that's the thing, right? You get the 104 or the 102, and you're like, Gabe is, because for me, individual players are a part of my strategy, right? Gabe is a part of my strategy. Kyler is a part of my strategy. Trey Lance is a part of my strategy, etc. Travis Kelce, like we talked about earlier, the top 5. And so you don't need to do this for every player, right? Like, I don't really, other than maybe the week 17 correlations, like, I don't give a fuck about Hunter Renfrow teams. He's not a key part of my strategy. I only have so many hours in the day to research this. I do care about, like, if I have Trey Lance Debo teams, I want to look into those, and I want Renfrow to be a part of that. But I'm not diving that deep. But when I start a year and I say Gabe is a part of my strategy, right? These are my corner pieces. Going back to the very beginning shit we were talking about. My corner pieces, or the edge pieces of my puzzle, I want to know what those teams look like. I don't really care what the Damian Harris teams look like. Like, I probably just took him when he fell really far, and like, whatever. It is what it is. But I have these 5 to 10 things that are like the core part of my strategy for the year. I want to know what those look like. What's missing from those? And I'm happy you brought this up, because it was an excellent question, and also mad you brought this up, because there's a lot of, because I didn't use this when we very first started drafting teams, and like, there's a lot of things I have missed because I wasn't using this. And so, obviously we built it, all of that, it comes off as bias or whatever, but I really do think, like, it's the most life-changing thing for a best ball player that I've ever experienced. It has changed my life. I mean, I obviously love Gabriel Davis, and who the fuck doesn't like Christian McCaffrey? I only have one team of them, and I, as you guys know, I'm not a robust running back person. Here's a fun one. Let's look at this really fast. Damn it, wrong button. So I have one team out of 42 that has Gabe and Christian McCaffrey, which is like, sounds really fucked when you think about it, if you know me at all, because I like CMC. And I obviously love Gabe. And the only one of them is robust running back. If you look at structures, it literally doesn't even make the screen. What the fuck? Hold on, I'm refreshing. It literally doesn't even. This bit is impressive, by the way. So here we go. So you see now, I have, in 42 teams, I have 5 total robust running back teams. One of them is my Gabe Davis CMC team. Why is my only Gabe Davis and CMC team a robust running back team? That wasn't planned. I don't fucking want robust running back teams like hardly ever. As you can see, the fact that I only have 5 of them and I have 11 0 RB and whatever. But it just happened. And how would you know? If you looked, you're like, if you like CMC and Gabe and like you just looked at your raw exposure, like you go, obviously if it would be in underdog or whatever, but you go and you see, oh, look, I want to take a stand on Gabe. I got 43%. And I'm about at the field on CMC, which is like just about all you can hope for a top 2 pick. You're like, cool. I probably got a couple teams of those guys. A, you might not have a couple teams of those guys. B, the teams you have of those guys probably don't look like you would hope them to look. So anyway, this has definitely gone down a different path than I expected it to. As I said, we will come back and talk about kind of some of the. Well, this will be a part 1. We're turning into a fucking Netflix series with this, but I do think it's important to talk about some of the other stuff. I'm really excited to talk about some of the other elements too. Also, my dogs are getting very excited. They're just starting to play, so this is perfect timing to wrap it up. If you want to get access to that tool, we were just talking about, go to spikeweek.com/go-premium, and it's only $25 a month. You get access to that. Our premium rankings. We didn't even show, because we didn't do a draft. We didn't even show the draft overlays that have been done on Underdog, and yep, it's playtime. They just ran all. I could hear them. They probably ran around our entire upstairs and then back on down and chasing each other. So it's time to wrap it up. We'll be back tomorrow to do a draft stream. This was a lot of fun, and we're gonna, like I said, part two will be coming soon. I think the same time tomorrow for a drafters draft, but I will see you guys tomorrow.